This is Groove Talk with FrogE Style.
Welcome to another episode of Groove Talk, everybody. On this episode, I am joined again by Detractions. The last time you guys were here, it was the Detractions.
Yeah.
We dropped the.
It's cleaner.
It's cleaner.
We've grown up. We're in our mature phase now.
So I guess it's been like 2 years since you guys were last on the show.
I think it was right when Jorts came out.
Yeah.
Which was early 2017.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, about 2 years. What have you guys been up to since then? I know that might be a big question, but
Well, we made a music video. Like, we won a Tell Us Story Hive grant, and we made a music video for Frankenstyle, which is the first track on Jorts. We recorded a new EP.
Smile and nod.
Smile and Nod, which we are here to promote.
yes.
Right now.
Available March 30th.
We dropped the from our name. New merch. A lot of new writing. We've gotten to a point where we're not playing a lot of Jorts live anymore, which has been pretty cool. And specifically writing a lot of stuff with Gus, since Gus had fairly recently joined the band last time we were here. So, what else?
Yeah, we're just sort of looking to the future, looking for this EP and maybe a full length sometime in the near future as well.
Definitely full length soon.
Absolutely. But we're just percolating in the ether at the moment and seeing where we find ourselves.
Yeah, well, the big focus right now is on our release, which is March 30th.
Absolutely.
And then looking to the summer, thinking we're in the planning stages of doing out of town stuff, some touring stuff. We're not sure if that's gonna be a solid set of dates or some long weekend stuff or whatever. Still figuring all that out. Whether or not maybe we'll be doing that with Less Miserable, a joint tour thing. So
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of in the
Where our heads are at.
sorry.
Where our heads are at.
Yeah, and then full length. We're putting that together right now. So yeah, it's been good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess Smile and Nod. Let's talk about that first. So I guess how did it feel to be when I talked to Less Miserable a couple weeks ago, and they said that you guys were the first band on their list when they knew that they were going to do a split EP. So I guess how does that feel?
It feels good. We appreciate it.
Feels good, man.
He's not wrong.
Feels pretty good, man. No, but I mean, we're honored, and those guys are good buds of ours, and it's cool that we're able to collaborate in this way. And I mean, the fact that we're doing vinyl as well is super cool. It's something I've always wanted to do. I remember back in the day, I was with a different band, and we had 6 different instruments going at the same time, and apparently it was just it's feasible, but you're gonna have a centimeter thick piece of wax. So yeah, it's cool that we get to do it, and it's cool that I get to do it with all these beautiful buds, and yeah.
Especially with Less Miserable, I remember seeing them in Rockin' for Dollars Instagram story, probably around the first time they'd actually been in town, because they've only moved to town, moved here to Calgary rather recently.
3 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them in a video like that. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Just actually wanted to go see them, which you don't usually get that kind of impression from 15 seconds worth of music, but they had enough of a fucking delivery that it really came across.
They were instantly memorable.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah. And they're also a bunch of total nerds, and it's really we've really just gotten to be pretty close with them on just in terms of being friends, as well as also I don't know, they're really great musicians, and they're good to pull stuff from a little bit. They're just very inspiring in what they do, and they have a very good if I was gonna think of a comparison, and there's Metallica, which is good, and there's Megadeth, which is more complicated a bit and better. I would put Less Miserable as Megadeth. I don't know who would be Metallica, but I would Less Miserable as the Megadeth of that non-existent other hypothetical party.
Yeah, it's been cool. I think I saw the exact same video that Gus is talking about. I think Rock for Dollars put it like on their Instagram feed because I wasn't there that night because I work at 6 a.m. every day, so I'm not often. I don't always. I don't go to Rock for Dollars as much as I'd like, but yeah, it's like Gus is saying, it's fairly rare for a band to make like such a strong impression on you, and I immediately was like, I really would like to work with these guys. I'd really like to, whether that's just playing some shows with them or whatever. And so this was kind of the best case scenario, the way it panned out. The fact that they were so enthused to work with us, it's super flattering and humbling. And again, like Gus is like, they're super, like most of them are graduates of the music program. I think at, is it Lethbridge or Red Deer? Red Deer. Yeah. So
they're
it's
like proper musicians. You know,
it's
they aren't fucking around.
it's cool, and you know we've it's blossomed more as we've worked more on the split, and like we did a one date out of town with them over the summer in 2018, which was super fun experience. Like it was kind of a taste of what that dynamic would be like, which was awesome. And I think our sounds complement each other really well. Like it's similar enough to work well on a bill while we're also very different kinds of bands, which is also cool. And you know, but they're a bunch of fucking nerds, so I hate them.
Yeah, they're loads of fun to talk to too. Just
And actually, one of them is Gus's roommate now. So.
Yeah, James and I from Les Mis will live together, and it's a fucking riot.
It's sweet. Like fairly recently, we were like writing a new song, and James was upstairs playing video games because we practiced at Gus's house. And then after we played, Gus like holy shit, James was like, "That sounds really good. What's that song called?" Like it became like it was like he was giving pre-feedback on it while we were in. It was funny.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been good to like build that relationship, and the recording process itself was really cool.
Yeah.
Like it kind of like they did some backup vocals on our side, we did some backup vocals on their side. We wound up kind of sitting on each other's sessions a bit. It was super fun. Yeah.
Collaborative.
So did you guys have the songs done before you knew you were doing the split EP with them, or is this something that you had to work on as they approached you?
We had the material done by that point. I think it was more like just a way to release the material that we already had, or like some of the material that we'd already been putting together since I joined the band. That just a unique way to do it, I guess, because there's not a lot of split releases that happen, at least here in Calgary. Like not a lot of bands will do like the split thing, especially not like a split vinyl where it's like, you know, a band on either side. Yeah, I don't think there was any real intent of like, you know, we've got songs that would complement this kind of situation. It was more like those were the songs that we felt like at the point of deciding to record them, which with recording albums always in music, it's like you have the idea to make a record, and then someday down the line when you've perhaps no longer anywhere near the person or musician that you were when you had these ideas, that stuff actually becomes a physical thing for people to listen to, and it feels so long ago, but it was just what we had at the time that kind of felt like the best representation of kind of the new sound that we've been developing since Jorts.
Totally.
And now the music that we have, I feel like, has developed considerably on that sound, and if anything, like the full length would sound like even like a further departure from that, but not like a departure in the sense of like, you know, totally wildly different stuff, but just very like just noticeably more refined in what kind of started going on here on like Smile and Nod, like a lot of like heavier kind of elements that started coming out, and I don't know, the music just keeps getting more interesting, I find.
Yes. There was this unspoken agreement, I feel, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we really wanted to make a statement with our first set of recordings, now working with Gus, because things evolved considerably when we started writing with him. So when we figured out that we were going to be doing a 3-song split with Les Miserable, it was kind of like, we already had a batch of songs we had written like with Gus, and we kind of wanted to pick the 3 that best sort of made that statement of like, we're different now. This is sort of what's to come, you know, and this is like what we want to be doing right now. So, but it was like, it was more like once we figured out the three, like they were already there. It was like refining them, and of course the recording process is always good because you're just taking the song apart and then putting it back together again, right? So you learn a lot about it, and then you play it live better, I find. So, yeah.
Cool. So I guess how does this new EP kind of differ from Jorts then?
It feels like, I don't know, maybe more mature sounds like a bad word to use but it kind of does almost. It's like I feel like with Jorts we were very like all fun all the time. We kind of just had these like, I don't know, just like still sort of surf infused, like just kind of like punk bangers, you know, or at least that's how I like to think about them.
They were bangers.
They were bangers. Okay, let's. Yeah.
As someone who used to not be in the band, those songs are totally bangers.
Yeah. Anyway, they were just like these fun bangers, and then when we, I don't know, putting together, looking at the songs we had at the point when we could make this new EP, it was like, wow, we've really kind of like evolved a little bit into like this sort of more dynamic and like darker sounds too edgy, but like heavier sort of like more sophisticated machine. I have this thing we're like this rock and roll death machine. And prior to this, we were like a very simple contraption like you would see on like BattleBots. Anybody watch BattleBots?
Oh, hell yeah.
We were a BattleBot.
Or what's the one with Metabots?
Oh yeah, Metabots.
Oh yeah, we were a very rudimentary rock and roll machine. However, with Smile and Nod, I feel like we've become this sort of like more sophisticated, heavier, bigger, just like
We've digivolved.
yeah, exactly. There you go. Anyway, we're a bigger
That's a deep
rock and roll machine.
Hell yeah.
Throwing the early 2000s animes on people.
Bakugan.
So was that kind of just a natural progression, or were you intending to like go that way?
I think it just kind of happened almost. I think the addition of Gus to the band was a big thing that sort of contributed to that, because Gus himself is like this like world annihilating songwriting force. So like adding him to this operation that we already had, it was just like.
Also, he plays really loud, so we have to play loud too.
Also that.
Really loud, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, he just brought like this, I don't know, more invigorating energy, I want to say, because it was like, I don't know, I feel like with the addition of Gus, it was the first time in a long time that we had 4 people who were like, let's do this, you know? Like, let's make some freaking rock and roll music. And then, yeah, Gus started banging the drums, and we were like, oh man, he's powerful, he's loud.
Yeah, that was kind of the shift, because I mean, Jesse and I have seen most sort of like, well, we've been present for most lineups of the band at this point, and that was like the first time where it felt like everyone was on the same page, and everyone was like, let's write some fucking rock and roll. You know what I mean? Also, I think just not that we're old, but growing older. I mean, since Jorts, like I got married, like a couple of us were in school, right? Like huge life changes, I think, for everyone in that span, and that just affects all your output at that point, I think. Like just if you're being honest anyways, which
Yeah.
I hope we are.
Yeah, honestly, I think as you get older, if it's something you're passionate about, it's like you almost take it more seriously, or you approach it differently in a way. It's like,
I think that you're onto something with that, because it's like it becomes harder to do a lot of things you want to do as you get older.
Yeah.
At least I find so. Like when you have something like a band, where a lot of people, I feel like by the time they get quote unquote older, they kind of like, oh well, I'm not like 20 anymore, so like I don't have all this time in the world to just go and frickin' write tunes with my buds and drink beers and get hammed or whatever. But like now it's like, well, we're getting like to the point where we gotta sort of decide what kind of things we want to spend our time on, because the amount of time we can afford to sort of spend on these things becomes more finite, which is like kind of sad, but also if it means you get to do something like hang out with these guys and talk to you on podcasts, it's like, well, that's like when it's worth it, you know? It's like you can see the love and the time you've put into these sort of things.
yeah, for sure. And it's also, it's cool to to see them evolve and get mature with you almost.
Yeah,
like,
for real.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to compare it to a child because it's probably not the same thing, but it's the closest thing to a child I have. So.
I mean, this might be a hot take, but I feel like some people put a lot more effort into making music and making podcasts and creating these artistic ventures than they do into raising kids. So I mean, there's a hot take for you.
Well, I mean, people do
That's
say
spicy.
people do say that marriages or bands are like a marriage, and it's a marriage in this case with 4 different people. So, you know, we all have our give and take and whatnot, and it's still telling. Like when we came here last time, like our mission statement was just we want to have fun. We want to be making the music we want to make, and it's still absolutely like our number one goal. There's no sort of alternate. Wow, I can't talk. There's no other means for us or whatever. Wow, I'm really just not coming up with that thought. But
It's okay, it'll come back to you.
our intentions are always just to make what we want to hear, and it's just neat that we're meshing on such a deep level, and we're able to be more sort of emotionally intimate with ourselves and our music
And each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's coming through with this, and it's coming through with the rest of our new material as well, and
That's definitely been huge for me. Like, deepening the friendship between the 4 of us on top of, like, the work part of it, which is, like, okay, let's write some tunes, or let's get the set ready, or let's pile all our shit in a car and go play somewhere, right? Like, and for me, it's been cool, because, previously, like, when I'd write music, it would usually be pretty shallow stuff, like, about bikes, or beers, or...
I had a song about a space monkey.
Yeah, and that stuff's super fun, but like, now it's I just feel a lot. But now, like, for one thing, the actual songwriting process is way more. I mean, I'd say it's not quite as simple as it used to be, because it used to be like one of us would just kind of like write a riff and some lyrics, and then we'd just make that. And now it's like this. We call it the like the forge. It's like forging. So like we all just like pile into the room, like our rehearsal space, and just for like hours, it's just like deconstructing and reconstructing it to the point where like all of us, I would like on the record it says all songs written by Detractions, because like all of us have like an equal input in like how they're shaped. Maybe there's one song where it's more driven by like Gus or Sean or me or Jesse, whatever, but it's all there, and it's way more like it's way more of a holistic process. It's nerve-wracking at times for me, because it's like you gotta be really vulnerable, and you also gotta be willing to like, for someone to say, yeah, I don't really like that, let's try something else, and you not take it personally. You just be like, no, we're just trying to write the best song, and 9 times out of 10 it comes out way better, like going through that process, right? So that's been the coolest. This is way in the woods from your initial question, but like it's just, I think that has been the biggest shift for the band in a really cool way, in a really like, it's forced me to, I mean, it's made me grow a bit as a person and as an artist too, because now it's like I realized the validity to letting people tell you that your stuff sucks, and here's how it should be different.
Well, and it like, to me personally, it doesn't even feel like we've kind of finished the song until there's this moment of like okay, we've got a lot of good stuff. What can be fleshed out more? Like, what can we add to kind of like really just take it in some kind of different direction? Like, like even when like you come with what you, as like someone who writes a whole bunch of stuff, like you assume is like, yeah, this is a finished thing, you know, it's got part A, part B, you do part A a couple times more and then it's over, like, you know, you got a song, and then you kind of sit down and someone adds in another part and adds in another part, and before you know it, you actually have something that's relatively complicated on your hands that like started from just like, you know, basic song structure stuff, like a verse and like a chorus or something, and like it truly doesn't feel like the song is done until there's been like some sort of like process where like like Nathan said, like the song really gets like wrung out and deconstructed to the point where you actually you had something there that like just couldn't have been there without the input of all four people. And
Yeah.
it usually is like kind of a ricochet off of everybody. Like someone has an idea, and then that idea gives another idea, and it's just kind of a whole cyclical thing where we're just breeding more guitar riffs constantly. We're like
Riff City.
We're like a bacterial
Tonehenge.
culture of guitar riffs.
Yeah. I think, and also, like, we're all just very different people who come from, like, very different backgrounds and musical interests, right? Like, Gus is, like, a super huge jazz nerd, right? And Sean's big into, like, sick 70s jammers. And Jesse's a pop head. And, like, I was a stupid punk kid in high school. And it's this big, like...
Amalgamation.
Yeah, and it's
Now
like...
we're all stupid punk kids in our adulthood.
Yeah, totally. You know, and it always... I love what Gus is saying, because, like, I didn't even realize it, but that's... I've totally had that experience without even realizing it, like, oh, I wrote this song, it's cool, and then I bring it to you guys, and by the end of a rehearsal, it's in a totally different place than when I was sitting in my bedroom, like, writing it, but it's so much better now. Like, it's... Because now it has all of our voices on it. It's not just, like, a Nathan song, or a Gus song, or a Sean song, or a Jesse song, right?
And Dead Churches, which is available now on Spotify, that was really one of the first times once Gus joined that we all sort of worked together on one big thing and had that super collaborative thing. Because before that, it was sort of changing up the Jorts material and the older material and whatnot. But that was sort of the first fresh contact for all of us in a songwriting perspective. So that was sort of the birth of this musical evolution that we're on right now. And
Which will then be the birth of the musical revolution, man.
yeah, man.
Jesus Christ.
Gus is cringing really hard right now.
Heads firmly in hands.
I think that's honestly one of the coolest things about like music that's made by bands, that every member of that band contributes to the writing process, because everybody has such different tastes in music and whatever it may be, and just different outlooks on life, you know what I mean? So when you can amalgamate, I guess, all those different outlooks together into one thing, it's something that's completely different from any individual. You know, it's like the sum of all its parts, or whatever that
man.
saying is. So
Like, all the best art is collaborative, really. Like,
Yeah.
it's I mean, I always say, like, why would I say I wrote the song when I don't know how to play drums? So it's not like I wrote the drum takes on that, right? Or I don't play bass, right? I also direct theater, right? But, like, I'm not a costume designer, right? So, like, it's not sure, maybe I'm guiding things in that role, not necessarily here, but, like, maybe my voice is coming through in a way, but it's alongside other voices, and the end product is so much cooler as a result. So much more interesting, I think. And it goes back to what Gus was saying. I think that material is way more interesting now than it used to be. And it's funny, like, we've only recently, for a while, mostly me, it was mostly my own, like, I was like, we're not playing Jorts anymore. It's done. I hate it. And then we've recently started, like, playing them again, and it's been cool to, like, rediscover that stuff, right? Because, like, they're good. Like, it's good. Like, it's almost like I had this weird aversion to it, which I don't think is healthy. Like, that's something we made. That's something to be proud of, right? But like, approaching it from, like, our current perspective on songwriting has been cool, because, like, I mean, it sounds tighter because we're better musicians than we used to be, but also, like, we're finding the moments in that stuff, right? The little nuances.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They're bangers.
they're bangers.
They're
bangers.
They are bangers. Like, honestly, Jorts is probably one of the first local, like, music acts and albums that I really listened to and really enjoyed.
No.
That is super flattering. Thanks,
Yeah.
Cody.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm gonna crack another cold one here while we're all.
And, like, I'm not just trying to, like, pump you guys up because you're on the pod. It's, like, legit, because you guys were one of the first people who came on the podcast who, like, wasn't, like, somebody that I directly knew. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
were here on, like, episode 10, and we're in, like, the 60s now. But
Yeah,
so
which is
I mean,
amazing.
Time makes fools of us all.
The funny thing is, now I didn't really listen to podcasts when we did it the first time. So I was just like, I was like, what's a podcast? And now, because now I work a job where I'm driving all the time, so I listen to podcasts all the time. So now I'm like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
We got to do this podcast.
That's
I can listen to it while I'm driving.
Yeah, that's exactly how I got into podcasts, because I can listen to them all day at work. So.
Yeah.
And you can only listen to so much music after, you need a little change, so.
Not with that attitude.
So I guess, did you learn anything from recording Jorts that you maybe applied to the recording of this E EP?
Vodka and toothpaste don't mix. Thanks, everybody.
That's gonna be totally on you guys.
That's right.
That's
yeah.
true.
So yeah, because Gus actually didn't record Jorts with us. That
Yeah.
was our prior drummer, Eric Jesse, who actually also did the capture, like recorded it for us, and he mixed it, I think, too, right?
Mark
didn't-
Troyer
yeah,
from
Mark
Evergreen
Troyer.
Sound mixed it. Yeah.
Oh, I thought he just mastered it, or did he mix and master?
He mixed and mastered.
Okay, cool. For me, I mean, that was one of my first. I mean, prior to that, like,
It was like all DIY prior to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a friend who did sound design on a play I was in, and I was like, could you record us? And like, he came to our garage, and like it was super primitive, fun, cool, but like very primitive, like recording sessions, a lot of like live takes, and with Jorts, it was a while ago, so it's kind of hard to remember what that
Yeah, I
process
feel like
was
one thing that really helped in this one was sort of having, I don't know, like a third party involved almost
Yeah.
to sort of like give us a bit of the boot that we needed, because I felt like with Jorts we had it sort of like half did for so long,
Yeah.
and then it just finally reached a point where it was like, I don't know, probably a year and a half, 2 years later or something like that, since we'd like started doing the thing, and we were like, can we just like can we finish it?
Yeah,
Can we just do it?
I think the biggest thing, like the cool thing about the process for Smile and Nod versus Jorts was very drawn out and a lot of separate sessions. Like a lot of me going in to do my guitar stuff separately from everyone. Whereas Smile and Nod was just like a weekend full of like booze, and we smoked a lot of weed and like ate fried chicken, and then just like recorded for like 12 hours straight. And it was like, we were all kind of, it was like us plus Eric Svilpis and Jesse Rhodes. Owner-operator of Rhodehouse Records, who will be releasing Smile and Nod.
So
Just-
many great sound bites.
Got to get our plugs.
Yeah. Plug your pluggables, right? It was just us in this weekend, like all in the room, even if one of us wasn't, like Gus cut his drums first thing and did all that was the first like 5 hours of day one. And then that was it really, but Gus was still able to be there in the room with us. And so even just having us all in the room, providing input in that way, I think really strengthened the takes, and also we got a lot of cool ideas.
Yeah, and it brought a whole like collaborative air to what we were putting on the record as
Yeah.
well, past what we had already done in the songwriting process. So
Yeah, and like we discovered things from that we can now do live, whereas I think because we were so drawn out and so separate on Jorts that like it was just basically like a direct translation of like how we play it live to record, which is cool. Whereas this was kind of like refining it even further while recording it, like
creating the studio version of the songs.
yeah, which then translates into how we play it live. So that was cool. And then yeah, being able to like have less miserable in the room to like get some more oomph, get their feedback on like hearing the rough takes. Yeah, I had a lot more fun recording Smile and Nod than with Jorts.
Oh, for
I was way less stressed about ripping a solo while I was quite baked. That made it way less difficult.
The room got so, by the end of it, because it's funny, at the time I was doing guitar lessons with Eric as well, so in between, so we had our initial like weekend, like 3 days where we did it, and then I went in after to cut my vocal stuff like separately, but then I was also still going to his place once a week at the time for lessons, and that basement like was permanently marked by us. Like it was just like it had this like stank to it, because like we just like lived in there for like yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I think that was I think that for me that's the big difference in the processes. Like
the weed.
yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong, but you shouldn't say it.
Smile and Nod just felt more collaborative and more focused.
Yes,
whereas
absolutely.
Jorts was very drawn out, and I mean the end product was really cool, but it took so long to get there that when I finally heard the final takes, I was like, oh yeah, that's what that song sounds like, because it had been a while, right? And we hadn't all been in the same room often for it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you guys have? I know you say like as songs come together, you kind of like all add things in and they kind of evolve on their own. Do you guys ever have problems like letting go of songs and being like, okay, this song is now done, or do you like feel the need to like keep improving it and keep working on it and yeah?
So far, I've noticed it's like even songs we wrote like a year ago, we're still finding things to add to it at times. Like sometimes it's usually like very at random. Like we'll run it for like the dozenth time, and then we'll just be like, oh, it'd be cool if. Well, just the other day, like we have it was a couple weeks ago. We've all been very busy, so we actually haven't had a practice recently. But we were like working on a song that we wrote initially like a year ago, and then we just stopped and took a look at like in the bridge part of it, like what Jesse was playing, and just like slightly modified it. Like I think we just moved it up a fret or something. Like, but it was like a song we've played it live like dozens of times at this point. But like we even the song that we've like had in the pocket, so to speak, for a while, we spontaneously were like, what if we looked at it like this, right? And it was cool. Like I think it made it way better personally. But
yeah, it's like they're always kind of like a bit of a work in progress, if that makes any sense. It's like maybe none of them are ever like maybe none of them will ever be done, quote unquote. But like we get them to a point where we're like happy with it, and we're like, yeah, that sounds like some rock music. And then, like Nathan said, at another point we might just like get hit by that idea that you have, and just sort of like tweak it that little bit to sort of like kind of juice it up a little. And I feel like that's kind of a big part of sort of the whole songwriting process with us, is kind of just like always seeing what else we can add, what other spices we can throw in to sort of change things up and make it zesty.
Yeah, we never really abandon anything. It's just sort of, put on the back shelf, and then we sort of pick it up again. And yeah, like even Dead Church is now available on Spotify. Like 3 weeks ago, got a whole new like bass section towards the end of it. So yeah, it's just a cool like movement from the primordial to walking on two legs.
Well, it is like, because you're performing stuff all the time, like it does take a bit of a different, like, it takes a different life when you're playing it so consistently. And we haven't gone out on the road or something yet, which I can't even imagine what's going to happen to the music once we were like playing it that consistently. But I find that just in the manner of performing stuff, you always kind of get a different wits about you. Good grammar, but you get a different feel for what's happening in the song as you develop more as a musician, and like as you learn more, and even as you continue to hear the song, like it can kind of start changing even as you, the person playing it, are kind of like taking it in. So that's definitely a huge thing, and just like the fact that we go out and perform it at all. But in terms of like I'm feeling like kind of like letting go of material, like there's definitely like a bit of a like an initial hesitation, I think, when you write something, and depending on like I've written like a lot of stuff from any level of like, I have like a riff or like some words to like, a fully fleshed out, like ready to go, like kind of locked off song, like no, not allowed to put anything more into it.
going all Danzig on it.
Yeah. And there's definitely like this, like you get attached to something that you put that kind of effort in, because there's definitely like, there's a consideration to that kind of work. Like I know a lot of people are of the impression that like they're a vessel through which music flows, but I think that does like a very big discredit to the actual work that does come into just writing songs and like creating that kind of stuff. So there's definitely like a hesitation about kind of letting it, when you let it go and people start kind of poking at it and being like, no, let's do that like banana instead of like dun dun dun, like doing like very minor changes, sometimes big changes. But when you let it go to do that, you invite a lot into it, and I think a big part in that is like having like what I definitely think we have here is like a really good trust based in the musical relationship, so that when you let something go, you're willing to let these people put their stuff into it, which I know plenty of bands where there's one person who does all the writing, they do all their composition and stuff, and that's, all the power to them. Like, that, it's hard. And
if that works for you,
yeah,
awesome.
If that's like, and if you have that kind of consideration towards your music and you can like come up with all those parts, then by all means you should be doing that. And if you can hire musicians and pay them enough to be alive a little bit, then that's good too. But yeah, it's difficult, but you invite like a lot of, I guess, kind of what we've been saying the whole time is you invite a lot of like interesting kind of combinations when you put other people in the mix of something, especially when it's something that has a lot of ideas already going in it, because it's to you it's like a finished product, or it's like stuff that you've like kind of gotten in stone, and to other people it's brand new. It's like information that they can kind of do whatever they want with, and hopefully they're creative to some degree, so they can interpret it in whatever way that they have.
Mm-hmm. I think all four of us to some degree or another fear complacency in like most aspects of our life, so that really affects when we revisit a song that we haven't played in a while, or when we write something new, right? Like, yeah, I think that's just a trait that's pretty consistent across the board here. So I know it's huge for me, sometimes to a detriment. Like, sometimes it makes it hard for me to just relax, but yeah, I think it's a good trait in this context.
And like, I guess with a band and music, you are always playing it live, so you always have the opportunity to change it up if you do want to. Like, it doesn't have to sound like it did on the album, you know what I mean? And like, honestly, a lot of people are coming to see you and they want to hear something different. If they wanted to just hear the album, they would sit at home and listen to the album, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think that's a big thing for me. It's like, if I go to like a show and I think to myself like, oh man, I could have just stayed home and listened to the record, it's kind of like, that's a bit of a bummer of a show. So if you're gonna go out and spend your $10 or however much to go and like watch these people perform for you, like, you may as well give them a performance worth remembering, or saying, oh yeah, I liked how you did that different, or maybe you tried this a different way, or something that like you can only sort of, something unique to that one moment in time, something that makes you remember because it was different.
Yeah, definitely. And like a lot of those moments too, they almost don't even have anything to do with the actual playing of the music. It's how the band plays the music and the energy that they are giving towards that music almost, and that's what's getting projected and that's what's getting remembered. It's not, oh, did you hear that cool chord progression right there? Like, not very few people are going to be like that. Like, only the truest of musicians are going to be like that. You know what I mean?
The bass player in the back of the bar with his arms crossed.
Yeah.
Well, because you have that visual connection now. Like, now it's not just because as we have all grown up in the age where music has been digitized, much less like recorded and produced, like, when you hear music, it's kind of detached from the fact that people are on the other side of it plucking stuff and banging on shit. So when you actually see them doing it, you're no longer like, I'm listening to music. You're kind of like in this visceral like relationship between them doing it and you receiving it, and like what you do with how you're receiving it, so it's, yeah, like if your live show doesn't have something that like is offering something to that, it's like, fuck, what you gotta improve that. You must change what you are doing to include more of the humanity of the fact that you're actually playing your music in front of people, and put that in your live show. I don't think we do that like with any intent. Like, there's never like a sit down and being like, all right, boys, like, we need more scissor kicks and we need a few less of the left leans and turn it that way. Like, everyone just is really fully directed, and it's interesting that, like, even since the start of this band, I feel like there's been, obviously between the three of them, because they've had like a longer relationship, but there's always been a good connection on stage. Like, there's always been something that even I lacked in my like previous band, mostly because it was like like shoegazing kind of like pedal style band with like a lot of fuzz and delays and stuff, but just like the kind of eye contact and like actual like physical communication you're making between the four of each other really translates out into what people are seeing. Like there's, I don't know, people seem to enjoy us playing, and I know that would sound like perhaps a conceited thing to say, but a good example for my own like right is Rockin' for Dollars, where it's typically like a wide variety of bands, and if we come in on the mix and it's been a variety of bands that like typically maybe not punk leaning, because there's there's punk nights there and there's not punk nights there, if we come in and do what we do, like there's just something driving about the music, and people start like thrashing around, and like just the mosh just kind of occurs, and then it dissipates as the music disappears, and it tells me that there's definitely a good like just kind of visceral connection to the music, so that it like feels very, whatever we're doing when we're playing live feels like it's really connecting somehow with people, because they're fucking pushing each other to shit.
I'm gonna get the mosh occurs tattooed on my chest.
The mosh.
Mosh occurs. All like my favorite bands I've ever seen live, both on the local and like larger level, are like the bands that make me feel special. Like it feels like I have a connection with them, even if there's like
part of the
thousands of other
experience.
people in the room with me. Like I feel connected with them, which is why I don't often go to shows like at the Saddle Dome and stuff, just because the sheer size of like that kind of venue just makes it hard to form that, right? So as a result, like I feel like we strive to that. Like, if we're playing to 5 people or like 100 people or whatever, thousands at some point, that'd be fun. If it feels like there's a connection between us and like everyone in the room, like that is my, to me anyways, that's like the goal.
game.
That's the peak. Because for me as an audience member, that's when I get really into it. That's when I become a human Beyblade, right? So, yeah.
You're a single-celled organism in just this.
I become a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert of the rock and roll, brother. I'm gonna hit my blunt now.
Totally, man.
I guess how has your guys' live show kind of evolved over the years then, if it has at all?
Well, Jesse plays some keyboard now.
Yeah, I try and play keyboard.
Fucking Tuna Melton John over there.
Well, I'm getting that tattooed on my chest. No, I mean it's a constant. We're constantly getting more comfortable with each other.
And our instruments.
And it's just that dynamic and sort of expecting certain things from each other, but like not in a like stern way, but like then getting that right back, and we're just 4 dudes on a stage being an organism. And
Well, I think for one thing, we've all pushed each other to be better musicians.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like I've become a better musician jamming with these dudes. I can only speak to me, but that's how I feel, and it grows every day. Because it's like when you're playing live, like there is an expectation, but it's almost like a playful. It's like almost like a, come on, dude, like let's do this. It's not like it's not like one of us is James Brown, like admonishing everyone because their shoelaces are untied on stage, right? It's more so like we know what each other's capable of now, right? Like we've seen, like the 3 of us have seen Gus progressively get tighter and tighter on the drums because he had recently started drumming like when he joined, and like I've tried like. There's been individual moments of progress for each of us. Like I've tried to get more because I've always been a rhythm player, but I've tried to get more technical with my playing, and so on and so forth. Like there's been like a drive just because we all know what each other's like capable of, because like we've seen each other in other bands and in this band, so it's good. I always feel like after we play a show, I'm always like, yeah, that was the one. That was like the best we played. And then we played another show, and it's even better that time. So
I actually hadn't like recently started playing drums when I started playing with these guys.
Yeah.
But I definitely like.
well, you didn't own. Sorry, I think I was mixing up like because you didn't own a kit. At
Yeah,
the time.
I didn't own my own kit, but I've like definitely found personally that like out of absolute necessity, I've had to become like a better musician in that term of like it and drumming is like kind of where I've put a lot of my attention because it feels like that's the part that needs to be brought up to speed kind of thing because that I don't know they just can't there can't be anything that like feels like it's like maybe dragging behind I feel in this band and perhaps my own like self-critical musician attitude that I'm sure all four of us have. Like I am the part that is dragging the band behind. Like just felt like out of sheer necessity there had to be an improvement. But I think, and like the live show is definitely there's elements now that I've like we always find some way to include something that's just fun to do and that I like ultimately the whole thing is fun to do like we're playing the songs we're having a good time like but there's always like an element of something that like is there to like keep it a bit entertaining just for the four of us as well as also like putting on a cool show and myself personally like I as a drummer like there's a like everyone has said I guess already like I am fairly loud when I play but as the drums, you command a certain amount of volume in all directions. Like you can be very soft, very quiet, but you can also be very loud. So you can ultimately be leading a lot of what's going on. So there's definitely occasions when we're playing live where I'm like, okay, let's see what I can, what can I do to kind of push everybody? Like how can I intentionally put everybody on their toes and make it so like no one's able to function from a place of like, okay, like I know what's happening. It's like now everybody's listening to each other. And that's a really big thing that just, we jam like when we play together, like we'll rehearse songs and stuff and like write stuff together, but we'll also actually like just kind of jam and fucking Grateful Dead Fish style things and 14-minute expositions on E minor and shit. But that's like, that to me is like is always a really it always results in something that I'm always satisfied with because the reaction of everybody to kind of like which means everybody's listening in the first place but when you kind of lose that foothold of like I know where this is going it's like now we're just like following what's happening kind of thing like when everybody locks into that as well as playing the songs like it's really satisfying feeling and I feel like that's something I know it's something that I've been consciously putting into the live shows, so I feel like it's something that's slowly been integrating itself more and more in different like avenues. Just feeling like sometimes things are a bit more unpredictable than they could be when we're just playing the songs kind of straight ahead.
Yeah, and there's no plan to that. We just sort of lock ourselves into that groove, as Victor Wooten would say. And I mean, we just sort of...
We're in the pocket.
Yeah, we're in the pocket.
Yeah.
But it just, as I said before, it becomes this organism where we're all playing dynamically and we're all just sort of reacting with each other. But we're still all on the same page, doing it as one.
Yeah.
So, no, it's just a really cool feeling when you sort of lock into that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you guys know about flow state, or have you heard of flow
Tetris.
state? Yeah. There's this really good book.
Absolutely.
I've been practicing like meditation a lot lately.
Yeah.
And like I've done a lot of reading into like flow state, trying to find ways to like integrate the meditation I do at home alone into like the rest of my day and into like how I approach like very menial tasks versus very like exciting and fulfilling tasks and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, like basically, like what I got from what Gus is saying here is that you kind of are all locking into this like group flow state. You know what I mean? Where you're no longer thinking about what's happening. It's just happening.
It's just happening.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And
like,
Yeah, it's almost like the best shows for us, I find, are when it's there from like the first note we play. Because sometimes it takes a song, like maybe one of us is sick or something, or maybe the crowd's kind of weird, or the energy in the room is kind of strange, whatever. Like, I think we always hit that point, but like when we can hit it from minute one, like if we could do that all the time, that would be like my ideal. That's where what I'd like to do next. So yeah, that's cool. Like it's happening. You're not thinking about it. I like that way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and like those are the best moments too, right? Because no longer are you worried about the rent that is due or the bill that you can't pay or whatever the fuck it is. You know, you're in this moment, you're doing something you love, and that's it. You know, you're having fun. Like, and like I'm sure you guys wouldn't do it if you weren't having fun with it.
Oh, not for a second.
You know, I think like we've described, like sometimes, like I've talked, my wife sometimes asks me like what it's like when we're like mid set, because like biggest fan, she comes to most for shows because she's usually my DD. So shout out if you're listening to this, thank you.
She doesn't listen to any of our shit. She just she comes to the shows because you're there.
Yeah, she's the Yoko.
Yep.
But no, like she's seen me play a lot, and like she's asked me sometimes like what it's like when you're like mid set, because there's always a point. She's like, there always hits a point where we're just giving her like that, we're not even like announcing stopping between songs. It's just like it's just one continuous motion, and I've always equated it to like it's like there's a train going, and I just grabbed onto it, and now I'm just like on the train at this point, which is the best. It's freaky sometimes because it's like, oh, what if it's almost like when you do stop to think about it, that's when you're in trouble, because then you're just gonna trip, and something you've done a million times, you're gonna start thinking about it too much, and then you're gonna miss that chord that you've played a million times, right? So
Well, sometimes it's almost like entering like a fugue. Like you just sort of you start the set and suddenly it's just over, and like you don't really know what happened in between because you were just so into it, and it just came out of you. Yeah, it sounds gross.
I'm sure and I'm sure this is not unique to us. Like even within the city, like I see so many bands that you can tell, less miserable, you can tell that they're just so locked in with each other when they're
like
playing.
A fucking exorcism.
Yeah.
Like, I swear to God, it's like, do you remember any of that? It's like, do I remember any of what?
Yeah.
What am I doing here? Who are these people?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like I can relate because like I snowboard, and I get into that kind of state when I'm snowboarding where you're not thinking about anything, you're just reacting to what is coming at you.
Yeah.
And if you start thinking about it, that's when you fuck up, you know what I mean? It's like,
For real.
it's interesting.
You got to relinquish control a bit. You got to get vulnerable
yeah.
a little bit. You got to just...
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's like you kind of gotta lean into letting go a little bit, but it's like that's arguably one of the more terrifying things to do.
Yeah.
If you ask me, but then like once you do it, then that's when you're just doing it. It's not something you're thinking about, something you're worried about. You're gonna do this or that incorrectly or subpar.
Also, when you stop worrying about whether or not other people like it, and start worrying about whether you like it, whether you're engaged in what you're doing, as opposed to worrying too much about what's happening several feet from you, or to whoever's listening to your shit on a computer or a turntable, in this case. So.
It's maybe a weird way to describe it, but I feel like I know what it's like to remember how to play a song, and I can remember what it was like to be playing a song, but I don't quite remember what it's like to have been playing a set, because it just happens so. Partially because if you fuck up, it's like, oh, geez, everyone looks at you, sometimes angrily if they're on stage.
If I do that, I'm so sorry.
But, but like it's just that feeling when you're so locked into what you're doing that you're not like your brain isn't like participating in it in the sense of like you're like sitting there trying to absorb it, like you're reacting to it, like you said, like you're just going through it. Because it's coming at you. It's like the Guitar Hero of life. It also happens to be music. But
it's like breathing. You know, it's just you're not thinking about it. It's just coming out of you. And when you think about breathing, suddenly it becomes hard. And
You end up in the hospital.
absolutely.
But yeah, like, and like you guys know what I'm talking about, and that just you sometimes it's like you've done it, and you play a set sometimes 30, 40 minutes, like wild amount of time to be doing something that you don't really recall doing after you finish doing it, because it's like you get off stage and it's like maybe you remember a couple fuck ups that you did, but if it all goes well, then it was just the emotional expression of it. There's no like catalog of events. There's no like doing the meeting minutes of the show. If it just like kind of goes off without a hitch, you just dumped it out and there it is, and people have to look at it.
It's basically like being concussed for the length of 2 episodes of The Big Bang Theory.
But I think I'd prefer that.
They're playing a show.
No,
Or
being
just for the Big Bang-
concussed.
yeah,
Big Bang.
Well, that's what. It's like 22 minutes of TV, something like that. It's 2 of those. It's about a set.
Yeah, you definitely want to be concussed if you're watching The Big Bang Theory.
I want you to be concussed
Preferably.
listening to us play live.
March
Live-
30th.
Live at SmackDown.
That's actually our next big move. Detractions live at SmackDown.
Be a dream. Are you kidding me?
Sean would shit his pants, I think.
Several times.
Yeah.
Just packing a diaper, man.
So do you guys ever have problems kind of being vulnerable on stage like that? Or have you kind of like developed mechanisms to kind of get past that?
No, I used to, and then
Yes.
this band came together the way it is right now, and now it's nothing. Now it's been really good for me. I mean, I've been very closed off emotionally for like a large period of my life. Not to get to Dr. Phil here on the podcast, but like genuinely like hanging out with these dudes and doing it and being forced to get out of my shell in that way, like emotionally, and write and do things that actually matter and mean something and come from a real place. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's the good terrifying for me. It's like the terrifying where like, you know, it's a step that is ultimately positive, right? So yeah, no, it's not. It was, and now it's not. Now it's just now it's like a drug. Now I'm like, I want more of it. So
Well, and I know with my first show, and I think this goes for a lot of people, like, you're up there and you're mortified because you're, like, 13 years old, and, like, you're looking out at this crowd of people that, like, you don't know what the hell you're supposed to do, and suddenly you're playing a Linkin Park song that just, and, like, looking down at your feet, and you can't even, like, move an inch side to side because you're so laser focused at what's going on, and yeah, it's just, it comes with time, it comes with experience, it comes with trying new things, and yeah, eventually you get that loosey-goosey, you let yourself submit to the groove,
supporting each
submit
other.
to the flow state. Yeah, you support each other, and like if there's ever anything that makes you uncomfortable, like you address it, and yeah, like we just work together to make sure we're all sort of on the same page when we get out there.
Yeah, if anything, I think this for me was like sort of the thing that made me okay, or like at least comfortable with making myself be uncomfortable and sort of be vulnerable, because like,
And be heard.
yeah, literally, like when Nathan asked me to join the band when I was like 18, 19 years old, I was like, I'd literally never played for or around anyone but myself in my room alone. And then Nathan was like, hey, you want to come join my band? And I was like, every part of me was like, no, that sounds terrible. But then out of my mouth was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. And then suddenly I was doing it, and we were playing a show at Vern's, and I was like, oh, this is what this is like? Holy frick, this is dope. How do I get that? And I just kept doing it.
Yeah, it's like, it's actually very similar in the way that like this whole podcast came together. Like what you're describing is very similar to like my podcasting journey. Like when you guys first came over 2 years ago or however long it was, I was fucking terrified. Guaranteed, I was terrified. I was like, these guys are going to be way cooler than me. Like, I am not cool. I don't play in a band. Like,
Have you seen your tattoos, Cody?
You know what I was doing before this? I was playing Tetris Attack on a Super Nintendo, and hell yeah. But I mean, like, I got nothing going on.
but it's the same thing. It's like this podcast has opened me up to being uncomfortable in like kind of a controlled way. It's pushed me outside my boundaries. I used to be such a socially awkward individual, and now I have conversations with people all the time, and that's really weird for me, honestly. But
You're definitely more like comfortable. Like I get like from the last time we were here, like it was a bit more of a. You're just more in your own skin, and you're like you know what you want to talk to us about, which is like super cool to see. Like can definitely see that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it means we're all doing something sort of right.
Yeah.
I think we've all sort of figured something out. Might be onto something here.
It kind of goes back to like we're getting older,
Right? Maybe that's the
the
key.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's like I mean I found that the older I get, the more I realize okay, I'd rather condense what I do in my life, but do it really well, as opposed to trying to spread myself thin, do a million things, and half-ass all of them, right? In my friendships and my output, like artistically and work and everything, right? Video games, everything, like everything. So, yeah, we're just getting old.
You heard it here first, kids. Getting old kind of rules.
You heard it from this 26-year-old. We're getting old.
Getting old just means you're gonna get better at things because you
Yeah.
keep doing them, and that's really not that bad.
Yeah. I hear your 30s are amazing for that exact reason. So.
Oh,
My
yeah.
my in-laws have described it as like your 30s is like your 20s, except you're not a shithead anymore. So so you like because you're still relatively in your physical prime, but you're just not as your personality's a lot more developed. So you're just open to.
Yeah.
I've heard it's awesome. I'm excited for my
It's
30s.
like the Price is Right of your age group. You know, it's the
Yeah.
closest you can get without going over.
Totally.
So I know that you guys do a lot of other things besides music. Like you brought your camera here. I know you do film stuff, theater directing, and graphic design.
Yeah.
Oh, I nailed it.
Nailed it.
Nice.
He does his research.
Hell yeah.
Does this
Dude knows more about me than I do.
So how do you how do you guys, I guess, find time to do these other things, and do these other things bleed into the way that you make music at all?
Well, I know. Well, go ahead.
No, Sean, what were you saying?
I know for me with film, it was like I want to have a career in the arts and succeed, but I've also seen where having a career can kill some of the passion that you have. So it's not that I wanted to have a passionless career in film, but I wanted to find a way to express myself and have that collaboration on a daily basis while still being able to hang out with these four dudes and do my own thing sort of separate from that. So it was just about finding that balance while also keeping myself happy and keeping myself engaged and within the arts community. Yeah, I mean, that was just my own experience. I don't know. For you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I feel like the biggest thing that got me into photography and going out and shooting photos was being in the band and seeing that, like, I mean, more, like, a lot of the times I'd be, like, I think about us and I'm like, oh man, it'd be really cool if we had some, like, real dope photos of like, us doing the thing that we spend all of our time and energy doing, you know, just because, like, it's another sort of, people are very, very visual creatures, and if you can see somebody doing a thing, it's a lot easier to, like, get into it than if you're just, like, if I go and say, oh, hey, here's my band, come listen to us, we're cool, or whatever. And it made me think that just, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are like that, and if I can take my camera and, like, make some pictures of my friends and the bands in my city that are really cool and doing interesting things, it's like, if I'm doing that with my day, I'm probably couldn't be doing many better things. And the big thing that like kind of just stuck with me was, like, if I can kind of, like, take these two things that I want to do and sort of, like, both keep me accountable to the other one almost, if that makes any sort of sense. it's like, well, I can't sort of, if I can go out and go to a show and take pictures of it, and hopefully somebody will care about them enough to want to look at the pictures. It kind of just like stops me from doing this thing that I usually do, where I just want to like retreat and like not be around people or society, because you know,
Yeah.
being a millennial, being kind of sad sometimes.
Avocado toast and depression.
Straight up, dude.
This episode's full of sound clips, full of sound bites. Yeah, I mean, for me, like theater and like music, specifically performing. Like, I mean, we perform, like we're performers, and so they totally intermingle for me. Like the reason I love theater so much is it's so immediate and it's happening in front of you, and it will never happen like that ever again in front of you, right? Like I can go and watch Goodfellas 1,000,000 times, and it's gonna be the same way every time I see it. I might find new things, but it's still the same presentation, right? But you go see a play or you go see a band, it's even if it's like one of the guitarist strings was out of tune, like there's something that is specific to your experience with that performance that I just love, right? And with us moving in a more collaborative direction, and then with theater, like I started in performance, like as an actor, I've moved more to directing now, and as a director, I've really tried to take the spirit of collaboration from this into my work as a director, and then vice versa, because like I always say it would be like the height of arrogance to think that like my vision is the definitive vision on anything, because I'm one person and there's so many way smarter, way cooler people than me out there. So I'd rather get their input and make something even better and kind of wrangle it all together. And that's how I kind of view my job as a director is to find the through line of everyone's ideas, you know, and allow them to exist in a space where they can all flourish. I don't know if that made any sense. Sorry. As I was saying that, I was like, wow, I'm like way out in the weeds right now.
Better
But yeah.
than mine.
But so yeah, it's a totally like I've become more vulnerable as a musician, which in turn has made me more vulnerable and also stronger and more honest in theater, and they're both performance, right? So yeah, it's cool. And also like each of us supports each other's outside interests, which is really cool, right? Like I make an effort, like, you know, Gus is in another band called Cheer, and like I love going to see Cheer because it's like Gus as a musician but in a different context, right? And like these dudes have all come to see plays at Erect, right? And like we've all posed for Jesse's portrait sessions and that kind of stuff, right? So Sean took the reins on our music videos because he had a specific vision of how he wanted that to look, right? So it's enriching in every way, I find. So
With me, it comes like graphic design and like it's a lot in the same vein of Jesse. Like because people are so visual, like I find the visual component and like the musical component, they're like kind of, you can't really separate them too much. Like they're like when I listen to music, there's often like there are images that are conjured, whether it's like really abstract things like shapes and colors, or it's like very specific like scenery based things, but like, and possibly because I'm also a complete fucking control freak, but I just have the like eventually things kind of become inextricable from each other, like, and I also record music and stuff, which I haven't ever done for this band yet, but recording music stemmed from the fact that because I play music, well, I should have some part in the process of actually like how it's represented, and if I've got some like part in that, well then if it's being represented like orally, like through the ears, like how do I control like the visual representation of it? And I happen to be like at that point like relatively decent with drawing and colors and stuff like that, so it was like I figured I could put the two together, but it's kind of like difficult to separate one from the other, and a lot of my personal graphic design work does revolve around like either show posters or like album art for people, and like all kinds of any of my client work is always like based around people who are within a musical context, so for me they're like kind of one and the same, and that like the visual delivery of something, just because of the nature of how music has been always produced and packaged, like one invites the other, you know. Like if you hear a really good song and you know it's like, you find out later that it's attached to some cool artwork, you're like, wow, that's really neat. But if you see some really cool artwork that then kind of goads you into listening to the music, like that's kind of a differently rewarding experience because you trusted a sense that has absolutely nothing to do with actually intaking the music, and it led you to some neat shit that you discovered.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the first albums I really got into was the Ramones self-titled when I was like 12. And it's because my grandpa had like the record sitting on a shelf, and it looked cool. Like the cover, like the four of them, just these four weird dudes against a brick wall. Like it's just so stark, and it's like black and white. And I was like, these guys look like aliens. Let's check this shit out.
Just they're really ugly though.
Yeah, exactly. And they all got bowl cuts. What the fuck?
I think that's a thing that's like, it's not necessarily missing in today's music, but it's not as emphasized as it used to be, I think, is that connection between the visual side of the music, you know, like album artwork and stuff like that. When you used to get records, you know, you got a big space, a canvas basically, and that you had to decorate. And like, how many CDs did you buy purely on what the cover looked like?
So many.
Yeah.
And I think that goes hand in hand with how digitized everything is. Like when you're not physically holding it. I mean, they have the Spotify, right? Like their artwork's there, but oftentimes it's coming up in shuffle on your phone, like in your daily mix or something, right? So you're just going about your day with your earbuds in or something, or driving. You're not like sitting there, you know, doing what my grandpa did and smoking a blunt and just staring at the artwork of the wall for like 3 hours, right? So,
yeah, it's weird because music has never been more accessible, but it's also kind of like losing that, I don't know, like edge or...
It's like people become sort of like separated from it. It's not as an engaged experience as it once was, I feel like.
Well, and I think it was a full package experience. I think it still can be to an extent, but it was like not only what you're listening to, but the ritual of like putting on the turntable and like sitting down and listening to it and like reading the liner notes and having like the artwork, because you're not checking your phone all the time, or it's not coming up on shuffle, right? Like there was a whole, like a friend of mine, actually the guy who played guitar briefly before Jesse joined, his name's Richard. Like he's actually the guy that got me into vinyl, because he talked about how he liked the ritual of it. Like he's like, yeah, it forces me to sit down and be with the music instead of just like doing the dishes and like just having music on as background noise. Nothing wrong with that, right? Mm-hmm. I do that shit all the time, but yeah, it's almost like that full kind of, it sounds so pretentious, but that like ritual of listening to a record and hanging out by yourself or with friends.
You want to get even more pretentious. You go back like 100, 200 years ago, if someone started playing a musical instrument around, everybody would stop what the fuck they were doing and listen, because that wasn't something that happened often. Yeah. I would argue that...
Let's go. Let's go.
Gus just leaned forward. It's going to be so good.
I would argue that recorded music is the single worst thing that could have ever happened to music, because as everybody knows, like now that you can, you know, toss your phone on to shuffle and like music will just be literally conveyor belted out at you. You lose touch with like even like when it comes to vinyl, like the physical ritual of even having to pick up and flip the disc, you know, like there's, you know, that there used to be like more of a connection to music, and you know, I can get more antiquated and pretentious the more I lean back in this chair. It's just kind of a rumination, you know. You'd feel things have gone very far because of how disposable music is in that context. So trying to have a connection where it feels like you can't really, you will ultimately have one thing without the other, but when you kind of see everything presented in its like package the way it was like delivered, you definitely feel the more complete vision of it.
Smile and Nod, available March 30th on Spotify.
And like I'm still very much like an album person. Like when I go to listen to music, a lot of the time I'm putting on an album.
Like cover to cover?
Yeah, cover to cover.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Start to finish. And I don't have Spotify for that reason.
Does it drive you crazy? Like, do you have any, sorry to interrupt, but like, do you have friends who like will just shuffle songs like every 30 seconds?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
just like skip to the next one.
Yeah, just play the whole song.
Just play the fucking
whole
song.
song. Yeah. And preferably the whole album, because like they put the artists and musicians put those songs in an order for a reason most of the time. So you should at least, like, I don't know, pay tribute to that. And
respect it.
Just give it a go.
give it a go.
Give it a
Exactly.
chance.
Yeah. Like Pink Floyd, for example. If you listen to any individual song, it's like, yeah, okay. this is good, but then you listen to the album and you're like, okay, now I get it a little bit more. Like
Radiohead as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's highs and there's lows. There's, again, that dynamic, and while it may not directly be telling a story through lyrical content or anything like that, there's a clear story just through the music and the feeling and just the emotions that it presents through dichotomy or through comparing, the slow song to the suddenly fast, hard, whatever song that comes afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely despise that. Just like, I'm just gonna throw on. This one's no good. Oh, this one's no good. I like that one. Actually, let's go back to the last one. Like, just put on like the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and just deal with it.
That's all Sean's been listening to.
No, that's Station to Station. But,
It's interesting actually because thinking about it in like terms of like kind of context of the history of the music business, originally albums weren't kind of the way that music got sold. Like originally it was driven on singles, and like especially back in like the 40s and 50s when payola became a thing and people were really making money off of music, you'd release like a fistful of singles, and then the album would almost always be like an amalgamation of just all the singles. Like that would be the point of having an album, is to put all the singles together on something you could listen to for like a near hour and kind of have all that music together. Then the shift became album music, and like bands like Pink Floyd and stuff, like Pink Floyd being an example of a band that would actually write with the idea of an album in mind. Like what is a theme that they could work around? Now, in it's bizarre because like the digital age, it's so warped the music industry as a whole. Like turned it on its head and shook it for its fucking lunch money, and just like completely changed the landscape like permanently. But it's actually gone back to that focus of like there's a lot of attention placed on like the singles, and kind of like is like in the structure of like an album promotion cycle, or even just like a musician trying to get themselves out there. There's a lot more attention placed on like an individual track and how that holds up, because that's largely the experience that people have. Like because of how the intake of the content has changed, people don't often sit down with a record and like put it on the turntable, even though vinyl is also simultaneously, while this is happening, like the strongest like growing part of the music industry, while this incredibly like quick consumption, like instantly digestive nature is happening. Like you have bands that are now more focused on getting like a good single that like maybe has a better representation than like an album of what feels like filler, and it's a very like old style concept of when you have an album that's got a couple really good songs on it and like a whole bunch of stuff that you're not really that into. Like that seems to be kind of the way that the industry has changed, almost, is that it's gone back to the idea of like kind of getting away from the whole album type of thing, like really sitting down and taking the time with the music, to having stuff that's very quickly digestible. Even though like the whole format of delivery for music has changed, the way it's being outputted to people has kind of almost gone back to the beginning a little bit. Which music is always cyclical, and like the industry is very cyclical, but it's just a very interesting thing in that like because it's so widely available, like the fact that you can listen to the entire discography of a band now becomes muted by the fact that you can also pick and poke the 4 or 5 songs that you actually really want to hear right then, and the rest of it is just kind of ancillary and locked away in Spotify's big bag of songs that you don't actually own, you just rent from them.
I feel like it's kind of like a balance between the two, right? Because like obviously there are those bands where you do just want a couple songs from them, because there are the couple songs that you want, and then there are the bands that make great albums, and I'm not saying I don't think that everybody could be like an album band, you know what I mean? Like lots of people are just gonna write really great songs, and those are just really great songs. But like it's just something, at least for me personally, when that album does come together. There's something really special about it that I don't think it's lost. I just think there was like a sweet spot in time between the two extremes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where like just albums were just like they were so good and just yeah.
There's a whole experience.
It was an experience, exactly. And it's kind of interesting because like maybe singles in the earlier days they were singles because it was hard to record music. And now there are singles because it's easy to record music.
Yeah, well, like technology has totally been the guide on that for like so much stuff.
Time is a flat circle.
This is getting deep, guys.
This whole like episode's been like a therapy session for me. So
That's like every podcast for me.
it's so good.
Nice.
I love it.
Feels good. Feels right.
Do you guys have those favorite albums, maybe? Like
Oh,
one
yeah.
that really kind of stands out in your head that you listen to as an album?
Pinkerton by Weezer is one of my favorite albums like of all time. Which is funny because there's like, I mean, I call Weezer's one of my favorite one of my favorite bands ever because of that album. Because like on a whole, I'm like, there's more of their discography I don't like than what I do like. But like, what I do like is just so good. And like that album is like, it's like a perfect set. Like listening to it cover to cover is like, it's like watching a band play like just a killer set. That's just like, has such good like flow to it and such good. That and Zen Arcade by Husker Du is like one of my favorites. Yeah, there's a lot of good albums. Music's cool. London Calling by The Clash.
Like we were saying, like the 70s, just like the breeding ground for like album writing bands and stuff. Like it's almost like, you know, like when someone writes a symphony, you know, they can put together like 70 minutes of music that feels like a cohesive thing. Like the album is just slightly shorter. I feel like nowadays though, there's like when there's a band that really puts together an album that like you feel like is a good thing, like that's always amazing. And there's a band that I really like called Uranium Club that puts together like these freaky like post-apocalyptic Devo style statements on like America and like just kind of like North American culture, and also a twisted like kind of like bastardized take on like life itself. And another band actually is Parquet Courts, like another American band that they're like because of like I feel like because of the style of their albums being like everything from like really frenetic like kind of breakneck like almost post-punk kind of stuff to like very subdued kind of relaxed melodic based jams, like it's hard to peg them at least from perhaps like a critical perspective as like any genre of kind of thing, but I think that's because they put together an album really well, and they put together something that has like kind of a journey of like, you know, there are peaks and there are lows, and there's stuff that really, there's stuff that emphasizes the context of everything else, you know, like when there is that kind of like variety, there's a lot of like strength in that. If you're looking for specific recommendations, I would say Wide Awake by Parquet Courts, Human Performance by Parquet Courts, and then for the Uranium Club, I would just, they actually have a new one called Cosmo Cleaners, which is very scary and horrible and makes you think that the world is a bad place. That's a good one. And All of Them Naturals is a good one as well. And those all kind of like, those are very recent takes on what an album can be as like a full statement, and I think that's an important thing to emphasize, is a contemporary take on that in the climate we were just discussing of like there isn't many albums, because the 70s is like the breeding ground for great albums. Like even the bands that are the worst at being the Sex Pistols, a band.
Yes!
You can still get like something that feels like a statement from start to finish, and something like, personally I feel like that's a very like orchestral and like classical style thing, is to have like such a body of music that feels like it kind of all speaks to the same point. But yeah, those are some contemporary albums. So for the podcast people, go back to that section and type those into your Google.
Yeah, I've been really going back to the 70s and sort of going back to the roots of what I like today more so, and what influenced the bands that I really like. I've been listening to, as was stated, a lot of Bowie, Station to Station. It's been on. I've probably listened to it once every day for the last 2 months. I've been listening to A Wizard / A True Star by Todd Rundgren a bunch really recently. An album that sounds like it was recorded yesterday, but it was from 1972. Really weird. Kind of reminds me of Katamari in a way. But I just love it. There's a song on there, Zen Archer, that is like being on a carnival ride that's just like taking you to hell. And I can't get enough of it. So going back to a lot of the roots, a lot of just sort of the inspirations of what we're evolving into, and sort of the genres that we're dipping our toes into, and yeah, just trying to find more inspiration from what came before, because if we don't learn from our past, we won't have a future.
Hell yeah. It's actually funny that Gus mentioned the Uranium Club, because I actually, literally after work, like a week ago, remembered him mentioning them and started listening to all them naturals, and was sitting there at the bus stop just like looking around to see if anybody could like could see how freaking gobsmacked I was, because I was sitting here like listening to this whole album, and I was like, is anybody else doing this? Put this in your ear right now. This is fantastic. Oh yeah, that was real good. One that always Nathan mentioned, I really like pop music. He's not wrong.
I'm never wrong.
He's very rarely wrong.
You're also the most humble person I know.
I'm the most humble person.
This is a pretty white bread opinion, but like Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite musicians and rappers of all time, and his one album, Section 80, always gets me. That's one that I like. If I'm gonna put it on, I'm gonna listen to the whole damn thing. Otherwise, I'm probably not gonna put it on. Not to say it's not full of bangers, and that's exactly why. It's just like ripe full of bangers, and by the end of it, I'm just sitting there like, it's like I need a breath, because he just like took me on this journey from like beginning to end, where it's like, you know, for some moments of it, I'm sitting there just like having a good time, vibing, like, yeah, I like smoking weed too, Kendrick, cool. But then by the end of it, he's like yelling at me, and I'm like, oh my god, you're right. Freaking race issues are just entirely bullshit made up by white people, and I'm kind of part of that. And oh my god, I'm so sorry. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. Any album that makes me just feel something like that, I think, is sort of like mission achieved. You know, it's like it took me, sat me down, and made me feel something for half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then just to add one more, because like it's fine. We've been talking a lot about like albums working on a whole, like as a whole statement, like thematically or like lyrically, or you know, like there's rock operas obviously and whatever, right? I've also been recently delving into like a lot of just instrumental stuff, where like the album oftentimes, like I've been listening to a lot of like funk and soul recently, and like a lot of like live albums, they're instrumental, and it's more so about like the musical themes flowing through to the point where you're like forgetting that it's even like separate songs. Like there's like, it's just like a perfect, like the band's just so locked in. Like I've been really into this 70s like studio funk band called Stuff, and like they have a live album called Live at Montreal, and it's cool because I just listen to it cover to cover, and it's like entrancing because like song after song's going by, but the band's so locked in, and the songs are so well thought out, and how they're bleeding into each other, and like the Richard T, the keyboardist, is just like leading everything in that regard. Like that's been cool. So
I think that like one of my favorite moments of life is hearing music, and like you described, it like literally just blows your mind, and you're just sitting there and you're like, is anybody else like paying attention to this?
yeah,
like when you're at a live show or something, and just you hear that, whatever it is, a riff, like a breakdown, like whatever, and you're just like, it literally just blows your mind, and you're standing there just jaw on the floor,
like
looking around.
Like when we first saw Les Miserable.
Absolutely. Bring it all back around. Time is a flat circle.
Yeah. I guess, is there just kind of any final things you guys want to throw out there? Or?
Our release show for Smile and Nod is March 30th.
At the Palomino.
At the Palomino. really cool band from the UK called Act Natural's opening, and No More Moments. They should need no introduction, but they're just like the most banging, awesome punk band out of 6K Nation. And then Les Miserable and us, and it's going to be a right ripper. So see us there.
Yeah, if it's anything like the last one, it's going to be freaking nutty.
Yeah, and our album Smile and Nod goes live the same day, March 30th. Available everywhere, including on physical media via vinyl.
I think it's going to be streamed through some website prior to
Yes, that's
Are they
correct.
Spotify.
New noise?
Consequences. No.
Not consequent. Jesus
no.
Christ, consequences sound. It's one of the like newer local ones. That's
Pitchfork?
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's on Pitchfork.
Pitchfork is pretty local to the Illinois area. I want to say it's new noise, but I could be completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If Mr. Label Man Jesse Rhodes was here, he'd be able to properly help us promote it. But
That's one I gotta do.
Keep
Shout
an eye
out-
on our social media. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say Jesse Rhodes and Rhodehouse Records are another entity to sort of check out and watch out for, because he are the ones making this this very much possible.
Yeah, I'm not
This
sure if
record
that
would
was
probably
mentioned.
not exist without him.
Yeah, like our previous out, like Jorts was on Transistor 66 Records, and this one's on Rhodehouse Records, a new label based here in Calgary. And I think this is the first release
Yeah.
that he's done.
It
So
is.
yeah, this is RHEP 001. This is the very first Rhodehouse release in a catalog.
hell yeah. So yeah, just follow us on we're on like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Less Miserable, also Rhodehouse Records. Like all the updates are there. So, but yeah, March 30th, Palomino.
Cool. And I'll have all the links and stuff for your guys' social media and stuff like that, where the music can be found in the episode notes. All the links will be there, so go check those out. Thank you very much for coming on the show again, guys.
Call me a failure. I found myself inclined to agree. Call me your darling, babe, 'cause there's nothing else I'd rather be. How many years do I have to spend on my own? How many times do I have to feel these plagues alone? You don't even have to tell me what you even think about me. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. Whoa. Call me your scandal, babe. I'll take a bunch of pictures of myself. Call me your last mistake and try to put your feelings on a shelf. Drinking alone is starting to get so damn old. Maybe you could come and keep me from the cold. Don't even have to kiss me. I just hope that you would miss me. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. Call me your failure, 'cause there's nothing else I'd rather be. Call me a Creepshow. I'll smile and not say that I agree. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow. All I've ever known is I am a Creepshow.
If you liked this episode of the podcast, why not leave a review? You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. For up-to-date information on the podcast, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at FrogE Style Productions. That's Frog, the letter E, Style Productions. For more ways to support the show, visit fsproductions.ca.